Here we go. We're going to talk about sanders. Sanders are going to be one of the areas in shop class or in a woodworking project are typically used for different reasons and different times. The first thing we want to do is classify sandpaper. We talked about this in class. We classify sandpaper by its grit, G-R-I-T, by its grit. And we classify sandpaper by its grit. We notice the classification by looking for the number on the back. This is a 150 grit sandpaper. This is a medium grit or medium grade. We go to something like this where it's much rougher, where you can actually kind of see the particles on there. This is going to be an 80 grit sandpaper. We want something really fine. The higher the number, the smoother the sandpaper is. This is an example of a 280 grit sandpaper. We want something really fine. This is actually waterproof sandpaper. We're going to look for a really high number, something like this, an extra fine or 320 grit sandpaper. This one, 100 grit sandpaper. So we know that we classify sandpaper by its grit. So the lower the number, the rougher the sandpaper is, right? The higher the number, the smoother the sandpaper is. Low, 80, 50, something down there. As it climbs the ladder, it progressively gets smoother. For example, this is a really high grit. This is a 280 grit sandpaper, also very, very smooth. The next thing I want to talk about is the different types of sanders that you'll find in our classroom. The one we use probably the least is the belt sander. This is a portable belt sander. We've already talked about the belt sander in the back. If you look at it, the belt looks the exact same way as the one in the back. If we go ahead and we use this or turn it on, the belt's going to rotate backwards. Okay, so back like this, and so we're going to act to hang on to this. It's got a handle here and then a trigger in the back, so we're going to push the trigger down. Activating the sandpaper. And this is going to remove a lot of material very, very quickly. This motor is going to spin at 1,475 feet per minute. So this is going to be pretty quick. And it's going to remove a lot of material very, very quickly, especially with an 80 grit sandpaper on it. It's going to remove it really, really quickly. So this will be used for maybe taking down a really rough surface very, very quickly. Probably not used or definitely not used for finish sanding or a final application in the sanding process. So this is our belt sander. These are the ones that you're a little more common with, that you've probably seen in our classroom. This is my least favorite. These are all considered what we consider a palm sander because they fit into the palm of our hand. They typically have the on and off switch up here on the front for your finger to turn them on and turn them off. This particular one is a vibrating palm sander where just the surface is going to vibrate back and forth, therefore creating that agitation and therefore kind of scraping the particles back and forth, making the material feel smooth. You can see that part of the sandpaper is ripped, so it would need to be replaced. But that's kind of how these work, and we just simply maneuver them around back and forth on the surface. My favorite type of sander is the random orbital sanders. These are both of those. Both of these are just different name brands. In the portable version of these, so this disc here, so random orbital sander. So let's think about those words for a second. Random, meaning chaotic, kind of everywhere, right? Orbital, meaning circular or rotation. And so we have a rotation that's randomly kind of all over the place. We really don't want to start these sanders up in the air. If we start them up in the air, you can see them spinning around. We really are not really concerned so much about the spinning. But you can see when I start adding a little bit of pressure to them, we stop the actual spinning. And what we're gonna get is, it's gonna spin randomly and kind of vibrate all at one time. We're really trying to mess up the fibers of the wood to try to scratch them in a random surface so we don't get a pattern on it. We don't get a random scratching pattern, because really, if you understand sandpaper, sandpaper is just scratching the surface, and we're just scratching the surface with a really smooth material that's harder than the wood. And so by doing that, we actually create a smooth surface. And a lot of you have been using the sanders a little bit in class. You've been kind of noticing that happening. So when you get your pieces all done, one of the things we're going to ask you to do is remove the layout marks. So remove all of this pencil stuff going on here. You'll also notice this particular piece, they did a pretty good job using the belt sander, but you can see that it has a little bit of a choppy look to it. It's a little bit flat on the edges. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to take these little sanders and blend these things in. So what we'll do is take these kind of on the side like this, have it make contact with the surface first, turn it on. You can see just by that little bit, we've already kind of removed that edge. Now, it doesn't really work the best holding it up on you, kind of using it to hold up on the camera. It really works the best if you can hang it off the edge of the table and then use it on the edge where you have a little more control. Those work about the best. The next thing I want to talk about is this little guy here. These ones are great because they are cordless, and cordless obviously means there's no cord, meaning we can move all over the place. They use these 20-volt lithium batteries. These things are great. They work really well. They charge really fast. The lithium gives you a little bit better, they last a little longer. If you've ever had an older drill, you realize that they don't hold a charge very well. These do get abused a little bit in class because we use them a lot, so they're getting charged and run down and charged and run down quite a bit. If you come to the sander and it doesn't have a battery in it, you're going to go to the battery charging station. You're going to find one that's in the green side, which means that it's charged or available to use. So that's going to be over here on the green side. Notice that these batteries are charged, so the way we take them off, we just slide them up and we place them over here in the green side when they're charged and ready to go. All right, this particular one here, we'll assume that this one is dead. We just simply take it and we're going to slide it into the channel, push it down, and when it's blinking, we know that it's charging. If it would get another color indication like a red, we would know that the battery could be bad. If you come over here and both stations are charged up, put the battery in the charge side or the red side, so we know that as these get charged, they can be placed on the green side. To take them on and off, I've had a lot of students ask questions about this. If you need to change the sandpaper, it's just hook and loop. It's a hook and loop sander, or what we consider Velcro. Velcro is a name brand, but hook and loop is really the process. So we have little tiny hooks here, and then we have this fuzzy creates the loop. And so we're gonna simply line this up. The little holes are the actual dust collectors, and then it should run down. Don't ever, ever, ever use the the foam sanders without the sandpaper on them, because it'll wreck the hooks and then it won't work. And I've had one of them already like that in the past, and it really creates a problem when they don't work anymore because of that. Put the battery on them. We're simply going to use these channels. We're going to push them on. Students have been doing this and then they try to turn them on and they don't work. You have to actually push the battery all the way on so the battery engages. To remove the battery, we go ahead and we take your thumb, is probably your strongest part. We're going to take that here and we're going to push it down here, and then we'll just slide them out like that. So we'll put it back on, sliding it back on, pushing it back down until it locks in place and it's ready to go. We want to remove all the layout marks or all the pencil marks, so we'll set it down on the table. Again, make sure it makes contact, turn it on. And see pretty quickly that we remove those. We're gonna wanna remove this and kind of blend this in, but we wanna sand, this side's pretty rough. You can see just by looking at it, I'm guessing you can see how smooth this is compared to down here or even on the back. So that is our sanders. We use these quite a bit in class. When we get done, we'll clean them off and then wrap the cords up around the handle like this. And then take the battery off, put it in the charging station, and then put these back into the box at the end of the table where the sanders go. All right. Today's video was brought to you by Gorilla Glue. One of the toughest things on the planet calls for Gorilla Glue, and Gorilla Glue is made in the United States. Highly recommend.